For my OER for my blended learning, I decided to use the recent chromosomal crossover that we use for meiosis in heredity. The reason that I decided to pick this artifact is because what students had to do was simply go onto Khan Academy and watch the video and then put in different vocabulary words with their definition. The one stipulation that I did tell students was that they weren't allowed to use the vocabulary words that were already mentioned in the Khan Academy. The reason that I decided to create this OER for heredity was one of the reasons meiosis tends to be a very hard concept for students to understand physically and to visually see. So I thought with creating the vocabulary and then them going through and working through the program itself to actually see how they draw out um, and visually seeing it, that they could really truly understand the concept of meiosis. We just picked up with doing mitosis, which is cell division, and that is cell division of anything basically other than your sex cells, which is what meiosis is. Once students receive the worksheets handouts from me in class, they will then power up their devices, which they're all given in Baltimore County Public Schools, and they will access the chromosomal crossover meiosis in Khan Academy. Now, this will be specifically loaded into our Schoology management program in a folder, which kids have been very useful, friendly, using throughout the year, so it's nothing new to them. Once they are there, they will go through the different phases of meiosis. Um, for you that do not teach science, there are two different phases to meiosis. One concept is usually pretty easy for students to understand because it is very much like mitosis. And then once we get into phase two, it's a little bit different because the chromosome numbers change um, depending on the organism. Most of the time when we are explaining this in class, it is the human body, which is what most of us use. However, with different organisms, we try to, I guess, set the bar a little bit higher and explain to students that it's not always going to be the exact same amount. One other concept that we do try to teach is this concept of non-disjunction, which can happen in meiosis. And it's also another difficult concept for students to understand because it is either a subtraction or an adding of a chromosome. So instead of having our full set of 46 chromosomes, we will then have either 47 or 45, depending on the chromosomal abnormality. Or I mentioned that students were not allowed to use the vocabulary that is given by Khan Academy, and that's pretty much these ones here. Before I gave this activity to students, I did it myself, obviously, to make sure that it was truly understandable. And I also gave it to one of my peer teachers. We were able to come up with 28 new vocabulary words, so there's no room for anywhere for students to not get this concept or not get any new words. One thing that I was thinking about doing with this is once the students are done and then they are drawing out the different phases, which is what they're supposed to be doing here on the later pages, is I think that what we might do is a more of a think, pair, share, so kids are kind of going to talk back and forth about the different phases, especially at my inclusion level, standard level classes where kids need a lot more scaffolding. I feel that this is usually pairing them up with a higher learner or a medium learner to, or even somebody that's kind of around their same range that they can kind of talk through it and get together and do this activity together. My GT students should be able to complete this activity with no issues. I don't see any problems with it. Once students have completed successfully through this kind of OER of going through Khan Academy, one last thing that I really like to touch on and make sure that students do get this concept of between simple cell division of skin cells and muscle cells versus our gametes of sperm and egg, is kind of doing this compare and trash type of thing. Um, I think this is a good chart to use. However, I haven't decided if I'm going to have students create an animation for meiosis. I did have them create an animation for mitosis, and they were pretty amazing. Um, so we'll see if I'm going to go with that path again and do the meiosis.